As promised, we are joined now by Ambassador Dr. Francis Muthaura, not a stranger to those who are students of history, but he's here more pertinently on account of the fact that he served as the Secretary General of the East African Community between 1996 and 2001, during which period was the revival of the East African Community. We'll also be joined by the Secretary General of the East African Community, and that is Veronica Nduva, who's joining us remotely from Mombasa. But perhaps, Ambassador, you can set the historical context. What drove the revival of the East African Community after the initial faulting start, 1967 to 1977? Why revive it in 1999?
Thank you very much for inviting me. I think the East African Community is really very special for the people of this region because it opens the market. It opens also free flow of goods, services, and even investments. So it also keeps peace to the region, because once the countries are working together, then there are no issues of possibilities of war. Now, the community, the first community was started or was launched in 1967. But before even that community, there used to be East African High Commission for the three countries, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, under the British governance, because there was still a lot of relationship among the countries in the region, because they were under the same colonial government, and a lot of systems were interlinked. So when the three countries became independent, of course they reviewed that cooperation, and they found that they needed to start a new East African community. That is in 1967. And that community was very advanced because the common service, the major common services, that is the railway, East African Railways, East African Post and Telecommunications. There was even East African Customs, East African Ports and Harbors, East African even income tax, which was East African. So it was actually like a federal. We are so much interwoven, almost like a federal government, but although it was not. So that cooperation was very intense. But when the three countries became independent, I mean, as we moved on, there was a feeling that Kenya was gaining more than the other two countries. So there was a bit of that. Then at the same time, the three countries adopted different post-independent strategies. Kenya was more capitalistic. It was more market-oriented in its policies. Tanzania became socialist, and Uganda was in between, especially under the Idi Amin. The policy was a bit confused. Ugandan policy was a bit confused, although Milton Obote, and also started Common Man's Charter, which became the Ugandan policy, which was more socialist, more nearer to the Tanzanian approach. So with that divergency, the community could not really work very well. And the tensions kept on building up until around 1977, when, because Tanzania was celebrating, and a very big occasion for marketing its socialist policies to the world, invited a lot of guests from all over the world. And they were using East African Airways. East African Airways belonged to the three countries also. Then what happened is that at the same time, Kenya was complaining that the other member states were not servicing the loans taken by the East African Airways. So the National Bank of Kenya grounded the Kenya Airways because the other countries were not servicing the loans. But it coincided with that Tanzanian big occasion, and that, trying to market their socialist policies. So the delegates, guests who were going to Tanzania, got stranded, and they thought Kenya was sabotaging that occasion. So they closed the border. The border, Tanzanian border, got closed immediately. And with the closure of the border, then the East African community could not function. So it went down.
Okay.
And at the same time, Nyerere, after Idi Amin took power, Nyerere was very much opposed to military leadership. They said he cannot sit together in the summit with Idi Amin. So still the summit was not meeting. So the community was really at a very low.
And I think the last time they met at that point was 1971.
Yes.
But because you introduced the subject of a summit,
Yes.
we have Veronica Nduva, who is the Secretary General, East African Community, joining us from Mombasa. You presided over your first summit in this last week as Secretary General. I saw you presiding over a panel discussion of the heads of state. What stuck with you in terms of the 25 years that the East African Community has been in existence following its re-establishment in 1999?
Thank you very much, Olive Barrows, and a very good evening to Francis Mudhaura, who is Secretary General Emeritus, the founding Secretary General of the revamped EAC 1997 to date, 1999 to date. And the very fact that we have Ambassador Mudhaura with us today is a momentous thing that demonstrates that the community has come from far. I like the background that he has started by saying that we started first up to 1977 and that did not work. But the focus should be on the fact that we decided to start again, because that means there was that political will to make it happen. So yes, for me, presiding over the summit on Saturday as Secretary General and having all those heads of state there reassured me of the commitment that we have for this community. More importantly, having almost 4 former Secretary Generals in attendance really spoke to the life of the EAC, the continuity, the commitment, and the future that is there. So for me, the 25 years, Olive, what it means is that we've made progress. When Ambassador Mudhaura restarted the community, they were part of the group that came up with a treaty where they identified the 4 pillars: customs union, a common market, monetary union, political federation, and we have continued to make strides on each of these markers, Olive, and that is what we celebrated. That is what the 25 years meant to us, that look how far we've come. We've had challenges, we've had achievements, there are opportunities, there are aspirations, but most importantly, we have the political will and commitment. Thank you.
All right. Ambassador, she mentions political will. What did it take to revive the community in 1999?
Well, I really wish to, first of all, to congratulate Veronica for what she's doing. And, I was in Arusha 2 days ago to participate in the celebrations, and I really was very impressed by the arrangements that she had made and the ways the whole program went. And the community felt re-energized, and that's the way we should go. What I can say about the community, why the community? Why do you think we need that community? I think it's very important. Community gives us a broader market. It gives us a wide area, economic area, investment area. It also gives us what one may call peace, because peace is very important. If neighboring countries are meeting in the summit regularly, they are meeting at the ministerial level, they are meeting at officials level, and there are mechanisms for resolving any problem that arises within the community. That's a guarantee that we can't go wrong. And so far, since this community, the current community was started, I think we have only seen expansion, more economic activities, and the East Africa actually have grown or have developed more than the other regions of Africa. And among all the other economic communities or regional communities in Africa, East Africa is the best performing. Why? I think the treaty was very well thought. It was a very good treaty. It's very, very accommodating, and focuses on putting the countries together, making them friends, and opening the market and also the investment area, interlinking the infrastructure, and really the community. There is no alternative to the community. If I can give you take you back a bit in history, when we started the current community, do you know Kenya's biggest trading partner was in East Africa?
No.
It was Rwanda, with about 100 million shillings. Very little trade. There was no trade. Kenyan border with Tanzania was closed for 20 years after the collapse of the previous community. So we are doing no trade. Uganda and Amin, we and our army and the Ugandan army on our border facing each other, because there was a lot of tents. Amin tried to expand his territory, so we had to keep him off. They even fought a bloody war with Tanzania. So that is the type of situation we were after the collapse of the previous community. But now, what is happening is that we are brothers and sisters, and we are expanding that brotherhood and sisterhood. Okay. So it's wonderful.
Madam SG, speaking of brotherhood and sisterhood, how important is peace and stability in the region to the realization of the 4 pillars you spoke about of the East African community? We had President William Ruto, who now chairs the community, speak on the situation in the DRC, speak on the situation in South Sudan, speak on the Somalia situation. How critical is peace and stability to the realization of the pillars?
Thank you, Olive. Very critical. Peace and security is very critical in the region because it is the impetus for which any growth can take place. Remember, we are all about movement of people, movement of goods, movement of services. For that to happen, there has to be a conducive environment. There has to be peace within our borders, within our countries, within our collective partner states. The absence of peace will then mean that we do not integrate as we have aspired, because there will be limited movement. And yes, you're very right that His Excellency the President of the Republic of Kenya, Dr. William Ruto, who was elected as chair of the EAC Heads of Summit, emphasize the point on peace and security. We have within our establishment the protocol on peace and security, which looks at cooperation, regional cooperation to ensure that we are having dialogues, we are integrated, we are talking to each other where there is a problem. We have our forces that are undertake a joint preparation exercises. As you may recall, the EAC deployed a joint regional force to the eastern DRC, and that process went up to 2023. There has been a political track where we've been having joint sessions, and just recently with the concluded summit, the heads of state reiterated their commitment in that now there should be collaborative efforts towards peace and security in the region, where other regional bodies such as the SADC, that is the one that is in the south, and the EAC should undertake a joint, should find joint modalities of addressing issues around regional peace and security, especially within the DRC. So I think I'd like to say that it is very important that we prioritize how our partner states are, whether with each other or whether within themselves. I want to give an example. For instance, where there is a conflict and then there are refugees, those refugees will naturally spill over to partner states. And we know a number of our partner states are host to a number of refugees. So all these point to a need of ensuring that constant efforts are being made to ensure that there is peace and security prevailing within the region. Of course, through joint efforts, through mediation, through continuous dialogue, through that outreach, and the brotherhood that you have mentioned, that by sticking together and talking through our problems and our issues, then we find common solutions because we are united, we are really one people as Jumuiya. So I wish to say that peace and security remains critical. It is espoused in our protocol on peace and security. Our discussions, our priorities, right now we have the East African Community 6th Development Strategy. One of the priority areas is peace and security. As we are developing our next seventh development strategy, peace and security remains a critical item. Our leaders talk about it all the time. It's an aspiration, it is a reality, it's always a work in progress, and we continue to always ensure that it remains at the heart of our integration agenda.
All right, just quickly, final remarks. Yes, Ambassador?
Yeah, I would like to say something about peace and security, because, you know, when the community was started, we are just 3 countries, so the issue of peace and security was much easier. But now the community has expanded to include countries like Congo, DRC, and Somalia. And you know these countries have been having really internal problems for a long time. If by joining the community, these countries can stabilize, that would be one of the best achievements of the community, because it would mean expanding our, economic cooperation with those countries. And now the population of East Africa is more than 300 million, and that's not small. So if East Africa, and I'm sure they can, make a major contribution to stabilization of Somalia, permanent stabilization, and also democratization, because a country cannot be stable unless it is a democracy. So if East Africa can, and it should be able to stabilize DRC and Somalia, I think that would be one of the best achievements in the African continent.
All right. I'd like to thank the Secretary General, Veronica Nduva, East African Community. I will find another opportunity for us to get into the non-tariff barriers, such as opening the airspace that was addressed during the summit. I'd also like to thank you, Ambassador Dr. Francis Mudhaura, for contributing to the discussion this evening. There's a lot to get into. 25 years is a long time, but thank you for participating tonight, and thank you for the book. A Moving Horizon penned a memoir, Francis Mudhaura. So we take a break, but on the other side, Citizen Weekend continues.